The Space Voyage book tag. This tag was created by bibliophile Bookreads, who was inspired by the news that we may soon be sending 4 astronauts on a new space expedition, which will last 10 months. Of course, there is limited space in the shuttle. They can only take a few personal belongings with them. And the idea behind this tag is you can only take 6 books. You must limit yourself to 6 books that have to last you 10 months. As you can see behind me, I'm a book maximalist. But that's why this tag really fascinated me, because the idea of just having a few books to last that amount of time, which in fairness is not actually that long. Yes, that idea was a challenge to me, and I have been thinking about it since I watched his video. So even though I was not tagged, I'm doing it anyway. So the first book in this tag is The Lifesaver, the one book that you absolutely must have with you. So for me, that would be the Bible, but not this translation of the Bible. This is the authorized version, KJV synodal translation, which is odd for me to have if you know me, but I have it because a good friend sent it to me when I told him I was learning Russian, and it has Russian parallel text. Now, I never really got far enough in Russian to be able to read this. I kept it anyway. The translation I would like to have, I think, is the Douay Rheims Confraternity translation. This feels a little bit like cheating because there are 77 books in this one volume. Well, not this one volume, but in the volume I'm going to be taking with me. But yeah, if you can hide 77 books in one, I can sneak it in. The second book is The Mind Expander, a nonfiction or thought-provoking book to keep your mind active. I also thought about it because this tag was already thought-provoking, and I think I would like a language textbook, a really, really good language textbook. And not this one, but this is kind of the blueprint, V. Gates. This was excellent. I can't tell you how excellent this is, but I also kind of don't want to tell you because it's out of print. What this did for my understanding of German and my grasp of the language and my ability to read in German is immeasurable. I wish every language learner could have a book, could have a resource in their target language that is as good as V. Gates. And I would be really strategic about it. So I'd pick my language, maybe not Russian. I think it would drive me too crazy in space. I think I'd go for Italian. And then I'd take a language course, maybe up to A2, right before the shuttle blasts off into space. And then I would have my resource, a book which is for Italian what V. Gates is for German, and I would just continue learning Italian in outer space. Number 3 is The Comforter, a book that makes you feel cozy or reminds you of home. And that's really easy for me. That would be Little Women. This is the coziest book I own, and this is my childhood copy. Really cozy, reminds me of my childhood, and my childhood home is still kind of what I think of when I think of home. And I would like to take this specific childhood copy with me because if you flip it, it also has little men. If I can get away with 77 books in one, I can get away with 2 books in one, technically 3, because this one has Little Women and Good Wives. The only thing I need is Jo's Boys to make it complete, but I didn't really like Jo's Boys that much. I don't miss it. Book number 4 is called The Escape, a book that lets you forget that you're in space. And that's kind of funny because space used to be the escape from Earth. You'd read science fiction books so you could forget that you were on our mundane little planet. But now that the tables are turned, I think I would go with Middlemarch. I could really immerse myself in the world that George Eliot created in this mammoth of a novel. I know because I've already read it twice. And I would love to read it again. And it's not just about the lives and dramas and dynamics of the people of Middlemarch, but there is a lot of philosophy in this as well. George Eliot was a deep thinker, as well as a fantastic prose stylist. And there are also little poems and quotations that start each chapter, which also kind of feels like sneaking in more books, even if sometimes the poems are not presented in their entirety. I am sure that this would really help me forget that I am in space. Book 5 is The Laugher, a funny or light-hearted book to lift your spirits. This was surprisingly hard to decide on because I don't normally pick books because I think they will be funny. If I have a book that I picked for another reason and it turns out to be funny, I'm glad about that, but I tend not to lead with my sense of humor when I'm browsing. So when browsing my own shelves to get ideas, it took a while before I remembered I do have a really, really funny book written by a really, really funny author. And that book is Good Omens, which was written by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. And of course, I'm talking about Terry Pratchett. I have not yet read any of the Discworld books, but I would love to someday. And a voyage in outer space where I'm stuck and probably need more laughs than usual to get through my day, I think I would really like to have the Discworld books, if they're as funny as everyone says they are. And of course, I don't want to have just one Discworld book, but if I could score a vintage omnibus with 3 or 4 Discworld novels in it, that would be me again sneaking more books in the guise of one. I don't think anyone's blaming me at this point, though, right? The 6th and last book is The Treasure, a book you would treasure, reread, or save for the last day of the journey. I think I would save it for the last leg of the journey. I would like to read this slowly and not just quickly over one day, even if it is a reread, and that is The Everlasting Man by G.K. Chesterton. And Chesterton is actually a really, really funny writer. And before I remembered Terry Pratchett, I would have picked a collection of Chesterton's essays or also a Chesterton omnibus to be my funny book. But why The Everlasting Man for the last leg of the journey? That is because of how he begins it in the introduction and in chapter 1. In the introduction, he says that he always wanted to write a novel in which someone gets far enough away from his home that he can turn around, look back at the small dot that is the village that was his home and suddenly see it in its entirety for the first time and really grasp it, which he could not have done while he was still living in it. And wouldn't I be light years away from Earth and really staring at this teeny tiny dot during the last leg of the journey, like the protagonist in the novel he never wrote. But also because of the first line of chapter 1, which I think would be an excellent line for anyone involved in space travel to think about. Far away, in some strange constellation, in skies infinitely remote, there is a small star which astronomers may someday discover. And of course, he is talking about the small star of Earth. And I agree with him that the most wonderful discovery I could ever make after a long journey in space, or even a long, ordinary journey on Earth, is the discovery of home at the end of it. Thank you for watching. Since I was not tagged to do this, I will not tag anyone else. But if you, like me, are fascinated by this format and want to do the tag, well, go for it. And if you have any comments about the books I picked, if you have any tips on sneaking in even more books disguised as a mere 6, let me know. I would love to know what you think.